Hello and welcome to day 2 of Wimbledon, the tennis podcast, live from Wimbledon. I'm Catherine Whittaker. This is David Law. This is Matt Roberts. And this is our incredible crowd over here. What a day. What a day at Wimbledon. Can't believe we're sitting here in daylight and it's been a lovely evening. We had our first rain earlier on today. Rain positions were being scouted, and yet here we are.
Yeah, it's definitely been a day of two halves, hasn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, this morning was miserable, and most of the afternoon was miserable, and then suddenly it's got lovely. And then there were loads and loads of matches all at the same time at 8 and 9 o'clock, which is just classic Wimbledon, isn't it? And I also found out tonight, folks, why they didn't move any matches onto a floodlit court with the lights on. So I can tell you about that later if you like.
But feel free to drop them. You can't tease us like that, David. And I thought we'd be leading with the defending champion going out, but David's got a new lead.
It turns out, and this is from Laura Robson, who works for BBC Radio, but also is part of the Wimbledon organisation here. She said it's for instance, Court 1 finished about 6:30 or something like that, 7 o'clock, and they could have used the lights in theory and put another match on there. But the reason they don't do it, she said, is to protect the grass at this point, because it's early in the tournament. They've got to use it all the way through for the full 2 weeks, and they feel like they're not behind enough to warrant making a move like that. So they use the other courts. If they need to carry a match over or two, they'll do it, but they're preserving those two main show courts that need to be used for the full fortnight.
Interesting, because a lot of people did think Ons Jabeur's match, or perhaps the Danielle Collins-Clara Towson match, would be moved to court number 1, which finished quite early today. But in the end, everybody on court number 14, which is one of the smallest, most kind of publicly accessible courts down there on the corner, ended up with the two-time finalist Ons Jabeur on it, and it really caused a stir.
Yeah, and she put on a bit of a show, played really well, and yeah, I think, look, there was definitely a bit of confusion about that decision. I think maybe, preserving the grass could have been put out as a reason for why they weren't moving any matches to Court 1. I believe there were some people who bought some late resale tickets for Court 1 and, thinking that there was going to be another match, and then that didn't happen. So there definitely was some confusion, but it does make sense, the line to preserve the grass, that is understandable. And, in the end, Ons Jabeur, I think, will be pleased that she got done and was one of the ones that beat the darkness.
Yes, because not everybody did. The old darkness of Wimbledon in July, of UK summer, rain, darkness, it's all been happening today, including, as I said, the defeat of the defending women's champion. We folks have had quite a day ourselves. We are sans cameraman Matthew this evening.
Are we on?
And if there are any camera operators out there worried that technology is coming for their jobs, I'm here to tell you, you're safe for a while, because we've had quite a stressful few hours trying to get on air without cameraman Matthew. If you're watching, Matthew, we do need you, and we will welcome you back with open arms. But we're also, if you are watching, it means we've done okay.
Yeah, get well soon, Matthew. When I spoke
Very
to him,
soon.
When I spoke to him earlier, he said that he would be trolling us in the comments.
Lovely.
I told him to get some sleep. So
rest up, Matthew.
We'll see.
We need you back, but thank you to everybody that's here with us live for being patient with us, and send well wishes towards cameraman Matthew. We have a stand-in for this evening. It is camera woman Kate, and she's doing a sterling job, and we're very grateful indeed. Let's talk tennis, folks. Let's talk about the defeat of the defending women's champion, Marketa Vondrousova. The first time, David, that a defending women's champion has lost since 1994, 30 years. In fact, a story that we told on a recent edition of Tennis Relived, the most recent edition of Tennis Relived, Steffi Graf's defeat to Laurie McNeil. This wasn't like that, though, was it?
No.
6-4, 6-2, an hour and 7 minutes to a 21-year-old Spanish player, Jessica Bouzas Maneiro. Is that right?
Beautiful.
Okay, great. This wasn't it wasn't like Steffi Graf and Laurie McNeil. David, tell us about it.
No, well, I mean, Steffi Graf, having covered that story, that match a few weeks ago for Tennis Relived, and that was the last time that a defending women's champion had lost in the first round. Steffi Graf didn't actually play badly that day. Laurie McNeil was awesome, and she was a really high quality player with pedigree at that level. She'd been 7 years earlier, had a big run at the US Open, which we talked about at that time, and she was a proper grass court specialist. A nightmare to play on day one on lush grass, coming in at you, and she won, I think, 7-6, 7-5, something like that. The scoreline was. This was a player who has never played on a stage like this, and who was wonderful. Got to say that at the start of this, she was fantastic. Nerveless it felt like as she came out. She took it to her. She played loads of drop shots. She played big from the baseline as well. She thoroughly deserved that win. But Marketa Vondrousova did not turn up today at all, and she looked as though the weight of that status of being the defending champion was just way too much for her. I don't think she was feeling physically great either. I didn't go to the press conference, but we know she had that horrible fall the other week. But she looked not really, I don't want to say relieved, but it was just a horrible experience for her. She couldn't get it going, and I felt from about 5-3 first set, there'll have to be a massive change here for this not to be an upset. I said at the end of the first set, I was commentating on that, I said she's in big trouble, and it never looked like turning.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There was never a moment where you felt like she was about to make it competitive, or it was about to turn into a match or a tussle of any kind. Bouzas Maneiro, after the match in her on-court interview, she said something that she had no idea how poignant this was. She said, "I have no pressure. I just enjoyed the moment, told myself to enjoy the tournament. I just tried to be free playing, and I did it."
Yeah.
And that's everything that Marketa Vondrousova was last year and now can't be anymore. You know,
you're not going to say this again.
I'm going to quote myself from last night, because
Excellent.
Hannah quoted it back to me this morning. She said, "I can't stop thinking about you saying last night, once you've done the thing, you'll never be free again," which is me revising Marketa Vondrousova's quote, which is, once you're world number 6, you can't be free. And that was the story of today, it felt like to me. Yes, there were a few other things going on around the edges. I don't think Marketa Vondrousova was absolutely 100% physically, but I also don't think that's why she lost today.
Absolutely. I think, she mentioned the leg and said she was a little bit scared because of that, but I think there was something much, much larger at play, which was the nerves of being the defending champion and the pressure she felt as the defending champion. And it actually took me back to something she said in her post-match press conference after winning the title last year, which was that she hoped that being a Grand Slam champion wouldn't change her too much. I remember her saying that. And actually, I think of all the recent Grand Slam champions up until this point, it felt like Marketa Vondrousova was kind of most unchanged by it. She's still pretty inexplicable. She's still going to get a run to a Grand Slam quarterfinal when you don't expect it, but she's also going to suffer some losses. It felt like she was still the same player. And then we get to Wimbledon, and suddenly the pressure and the nerves of being the defending champion kind of overtook her, and she really struggled on serve throughout. And she's got a 1-5 record on grass in her career if you take out last year's run to the title here. Like, her game that fortnight at Wimbledon was really effective on the grass. Of course it was. But if she's not quite, or today she was nowhere near her best, her ball just kind of sits there a little bit. It wasn't putting Bouzas Maneiro under too much pressure, and she was able to play free in a way that Vondrousova wasn't. And yeah, it was a tough watch for sure, but one that I think just shows the impact that kind of the tournament can have on a player. It's something to behold.
It was a tough scene in her press conference afterwards. I have to say, I think she did magnificently, Marketa Vondrousova, given how clearly devastated she was. She'd been crying. She was still crying. She had the cap pulled over her head, but she actually spoke brilliantly. She said she felt scared today, not at all free. She said basically just weighed down by nerves and pressure, which was totally exacerbated by how good her opponent was and the type of match she played, just not giving Vondrousova anything for free. No free points, Vondrousova kept on saying, like nothing to build a foundation on.
And that got me thinking back to last year's final when Vondrousova was the freer player out of her and Jabeur, and makes me think maybe Vondrousova was kind of really nervous that day as well, and yet Jabeur kept giving her free points, so maybe that helped free her up. But also, I really subscribe to the idea that it's very hard to do something you've never done before. That is something that kind of gets said a lot in this sport, and I totally believe it to be true. And of course that's what Vondrousova did at Wimbledon here last year by winning the title. It was an incredible feat. But I also think back to something Naomi Osaka said once, where you might think it's easier to win your second Grand Slam than your first, but you know how hard it is. You know what it takes, and it can maybe be quite daunting to have all that information and to have felt that pressure before and think, I'm not sure. Like when you're free and fearless, it's easier maybe for some people, and when you know how hard it is, it can be harder for some people. People experience it differently, I think, and really, really felt for Marketa Vondrousova today. Like it's such an exposing position. Like I love Wimbledon's tradition of men's champion comes out Monday, women's champion comes out Tuesday. They both get to sort of open centre court in that way, but there's nowhere to hide out there. You put it to her in the press conference pre-tournament, David. Like, when you're going to play exactly. There's all this build up to it. There's no extenuating circumstances to take your mind off something. It's just one thing to focus on. And it was tough for Vondrousova today, and kind of a really big moment, actually.
Matt, you went to Jessica Bouzas Maneiro's press conference and asked the burning question on everybody's lips. You asked about the tattoo. This is what a journalist looks like, folks.
Yes, I did a tennis question first and then followed up with the big tattoo question.
I saw you laying the groundwork with that credible tennis question.
Right. Because there'd been an interview that Bouzas Maneiro had done with Clay magazine circulating, where it was revealed that she has a tattoo on her finger that says "shh," SHH, and
I've booked in at the tattoo parlor.
That would be perfect for you, Catherine.
The Olympic rings will have to wait.
Yeah.
It's shh.
Well, I'm working on my archery skills.
Right.
I'll get that one.
Yeah. And she said in that interview that she was kind of waiting to do something big, to pull out the celebration, which was putting her finger to her lips and telling people to shh. And she didn't do it today, so it's like, what is the big thing that she's waiting for if it's not knocking out the defending champion at Wimbledon?
Who are you shushing?
Well, I think sort of doubters and haters generally.
I'm starting to think that is the route to success.
Yeah.
Identify a hater and decide to stick it to them.
Okay, I will.
Yeah.
So I went to the press conference expecting, kind of someone to, if you've got a tattoo, like you're expecting a certain type of personality maybe, and not what I found. Very understated, and kind of rode it back and kind of said, like, I really don't want that tattoo to be misinterpreted. It's not meant to be provocative. It's just something that she's kind of got between herself and these people that have doubted her, rather than sort of someone specific. She said she's got 7 or 8 tattoos, but that's the only one that isn't something sort of family related or, something like that. I stayed for the Spanish portion of the press conference where she spoke about Garbina Muguruza being a role model for her, and apparently Muguruza posted something on social media congratulating her, and she'd seen it and she had to check that it wasn't a fake account, because she was like, is that really Muguruza sort of tweeting me or posting about me? And it was. And yeah, like just a lovely person who I think we all sort of got to know today. I don't think she'd ever won a set on a sort of main draw WTA tour level match on grass before. This was, as David said, not Laurie McNeil. This was kind of out of nowhere. I did enjoy hidden in that Clay magazine interview that I spoke about earlier. It was revealed that she's a big reader, and at the time that interview was done, which I think was back end of last year, maybe start of this year, she was reading a book called Atomic Habits, which was a sort of psychology book recommended to her by Alejandro Davidovich Fokina.
Nope, wouldn't be reading. Nope.
The guy that hit the underarm serve and shat himself.
Oh my God, I can't play this point.
Right, I was thinking, he's giving you tips? And yet, apparently, those tips lead to you knocking out the defending champion at Wimbledon. So all power to Bouzas Maneiro. I always like it when you discover a new player during a Grand Slam.
What's the book?
Atomic Habits.
Okay.
It's a good title.
It is.
I quite fancy that.
Okay, well, we've given it a big plug. I loved her. I loved the tattoo. I don't know. I feel like if you're gonna get something literally burned onto your skin, really lean into the sentiment. I would just be going around Taylor Fritzing all over the place. But yeah, it was good on her. She did not blink today.
No, and she was already coming in with a career high ranking of 83. She's 21 years of age, and it struck me looking at her results. I'm often curious, how have you built that ranking? Because I didn't know who she was, really. I mean, I may have heard the name, but she doesn't come across very often on tournaments. And actually looking at the record this year, it tells that story. She's won several ITFs and WTA 125s. She's reached other finals at that level, and then she's played a handful of main draw qualifying where she's tried to get in. But basically, she's built a ranking at that lower level. Now, that does mean that you've got a big step up in quality to play, but it also means she'd done a heck of a lot of winning this year. Dozens of matches she'd won, and you could just see it. It was all harnessed and ready, that game. Good foundations, and she just brought it.
And there's parallels there. We'll come on to talk about this a bit later with the player that beat Andrey Rublev today, Francisco Comisana, who you can tell by the way I'm saying that name, I hadn't heard of him before today. And then I look up his ranking and discover he's well inside the world's top 100. He's 87 in the world, and I'm thinking, I eat and sleep tennis. Like, how can I not know someone ranked to that level? But you can get inside the world's top 100 basically playing no ATP tennis. This was Francisco Comisana's first tour level win. He's done all his winning before now, gained all his points really from the Challenger Tour. There's a ceiling of about 80 in the world for doing that, but you can get inside the top 100 doing that. So you do at slams get these names popping up where you think, well, they're not going to be any good. If we haven't heard of them, then how good can they be? Because we're saddos. This is what we do with all of our lives. But that's absolutely not the case. You can be a darn good tennis player and be doing a lot of winning, just kind of away from the spotlight. So look, we'll come on to talk about him and Rublev's defeat. We'll come on to talk about the rest of the women's results from today. But I do think we should pivot for a moment and go all the way back to the start of the day and the news that we woke up to, which was both surprising and not at all. Andy Murray's withdrawal from...
What time did you wake up? David had been up hours.
I've been outed. As I was saying...
Sorry.
The news that Andy Murray had withdrawn from the singles event at the championships this year, and will be playing in the doubles with brother Jamie. That was in a statement that his team distributed this morning. There was a bit of further insight given in an interview that he gave to BBC Television earlier on today. He said, "I'm disappointed. I wanted to play in the tournament. I wanted to have a chance to go out there and walk out on centre court on my own and give it another go. But I was only going to do that if I felt like I was going to be competitive, and I didn't feel like that today. I wanted that moment as much for me as for the people who've supported me over the years, the fans, but also my closest friends, family, my team. It was important for me to do that with them as well. The timing was horrible. The surgery was a complex one. It just wasn't to be."
Yeah, it's tough to hear it, isn't it? And I mean, can only imagine how he feels, really. I'm glad that doubles is on the horizon, and I hope he has no setback between now and then. We had Jamie Baker, the tournament director here, and a childhood friend of his the other day saying that he feels he will be on the court at some point in this championships, and unless he has another setback. And Andy is very clear in his statement that he intends to play the doubles and to play this tournament one more time. That's it. And I hope that he gets that chance, because I think that will really soften the blow, to be out there with Jamie, particularly to share what I think will be an incredibly emotional moment. And who knows, maybe they might even be able to win a match, maybe more, who knows. But I hope that he gets to do that. But even so, I feel for him, and I feel for all the people that have loved watching him all these years, that they didn't get a chance to see him one more time on that centre court, roaring in a defiance at logic, really, the way he would come back in matches. There was a point circulating from his match against Thanasi Kokkinakis at the Australian Open where he's 2 sets down, 2 love down. The guy's in charge of the point, sending him all over the place, and somehow Murray manages to win the point. And then it's Murray doing the hand to the ear when he's 2 sets and 2 love down. And now we know that 4 hours later he'd won, and that just sums Andy Murray up. And I've probably had as much, if not more, fun watching and commentating on Andy Murray over the years, and felt more things than anybody. And to use Hannah's words in her wonderful column about him, thank you for that.
Yeah, incredibly well said, and I share that. We got a lot of other tennis to talk about, and this isn't our emergency Andy Murray podcast, although I'm sure, well, it won't be emergency, I don't think, but that podcast will exist one day very soon. But to summarise, I think you've put it very well there at the end. He has made me feel more things than any other tennis player I have watched. And yeah, it's very emotional. I was very confused emotionally by that statement, because I was very relieved by it. Like, it always felt like madness to me for him to be thinking of playing singles, but he's a bit mad.
You end up
isn't
surprised
he? Andy Murray
either way,
is
don't you?
a certain kind of mad.
I would have been surprised if he played, and I've been surprised if he didn't in the end.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, there was kind of relief for us, I think, but just sadness for him, because we know how much he wanted to get that moment. And how, like, a few weeks ago he'd have been thinking, he was talking about how retirement's a sad thing. It's not something that he wants to celebrate, really. He doesn't want to stop playing tennis. He loves it so much. But a few weeks ago he probably thought, he would at least be able to go out being competitive in singles at Wimbledon. We saw the way he played against Popper in at Queen's. That was competitive in singles, and that, I think, would have been what he had in mind for his end. And that in itself is not the end he had in mind when he was world number 1 and before all the hip trouble. So it was already a diminished end. But given what's happened in the last few weeks, even that's been taken away from him, and that is so sad. And yeah, I think you've both said it extremely well. He made you care, he made you feel things. He almost felt like because he's not ordinary at all, but he felt like the most ordinary, trying to do battle with the superhumans, to kind of use Carlos Alcaraz's word as he described Novak Djokovic, and Murray had to come up against 3 of them, and so often he beat them, and even when he didn't, he pushed them, and he's one of the all-time tennis greats, British sporting greats, and it's going to be a huge loss to the sport that he's not going to be around, and it's going to be very special, I think. We think Thursday that he'll play doubles alongside Jamie, and we can all come together and cry and, as you say, thank Andy Murray, really.
Yeah. Should have left this portion until the end of the show, because I am
got to come up with a segue now.
Yeah, I am both on the brink of tears and in need of a jaunty segue. What a great place to be for a presenter. But honestly, do check out Hannah's column if you haven't. It's called Thank You, Andy. It's available for anyone to look at, and I'll post the link on our Instagram, and we'll maybe pop it in our show notes as well, because it's definitive. It's absolutely definitive about Andy Murray. So he withdrew from his singles match this morning. David Goffin came in as what do you want to call him? Not a lucky loser, David.
Understudy.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of correspondence about this. The bar just been going bananas.
Do they feel positive about understudy?
I think there's been some positivity. There's also been nobody said no. Lucky loser's fine. You can call people a loser, and you can call them lucky, and that's nice. No, it's not. It shouldn't be happening.
How do you feel about fortunate flops?
What about subs?
Subs
Did it?
See?
Got an airing.
People,
backups.
People are all over it.
Well, whatever you call it, David Goffin was one today. And we saw him looking really sad at qualifying, didn't we, after he'd lost in the final round. So no one likes to see a sad David Goffin, so I was pleased for him. And it caused them to rejig the schedule today, because of course Andy Murray had been scheduled on centre court, and bless David Goffin, they didn't necessarily want him filling that slot.
Would have been quite funny.
It would have been. But enter Jack Draper, very fittingly, Britain's new men's number 1.
There was something quite profound about that, wasn't there? Murray having to leave the schedule, and Draper literally being moved into that spot.
And I don't know if it's sort of too much searching for narrative to suggest that what ended up happening out there today, David, was anything to do with that profoundness. Goodness me. But it was not straightforward for Jack Draper, and I think suddenly Jack Draper has moved into the section of his career where it's expected that first rounds at slams will be straightforward, and that is brand new for him. I'd say this is the first slam where that's the case, and it was anything but straightforward.
And he's supposed to be the guy now. There's Emma Raducanu and Katie Bolter on the women's side, but in the men's side, he's the guy. He's the man that everybody in Britain is hoping will be the next Andy Murray, or something that they can hang their hats on now that Andy's moved aside. And I think that it's not lost on Jack Draper, and I suspect that probably did make it more difficult for him. I mean, he loves Andy Murray. He reveres him. He wants to spend as much time with him as he can. He's so happy to have Andy Murray in his world, I think, and I think he's very emotional about the fact that Murray's finishing himself. He's a tennis fan himself. He's his mentor in many ways, and he can see that Murray is having to end it, and there's no way around it anymore. But now it's Jack's time, and he would have known all this. Well, he's been moved into his slot, actually moved onto the court to fill the guy's boots, which is quite a moment, really.
It's almost a bit too on the nose.
It was. And listen, I totally understand why Wimbledon did what they did, and they did the right thing. But it's a lot for Jack Draper. And I mean, honestly, obviously he would have loved to have just won in straight sets and flattened the guy, Elias Simmer, and who played bloody well today, by the way, and very nearly won that match. But the timing was not there for Draper. He broke in the first game, and I thought, here we go, he's just going for it. And then he was immediately broken back. And as the match wore on, Laura Robson was in our commentary box, and she's really good at analysing what's going on, I tend to find. And she said it's not about tactics or how much he wants it or how much he's prepared. He's just not feeling the ball today. And I said, is that something that can come during the match? Can you expect that to just come? And she goes, probably not. You've probably just got to try and get through it. Use what you've got on the day. This is my game today. I wish I was playing better, but I'm not. So I've got to find a way to win it so that then I can go on the practice court and get my timing back. Who knows why the timing wasn't there, but it wasn't. And at the same time, as dramatic and kind of excruciating as it all was, well, it was perfect, wasn't it? Because that was supposed to be Andy Murray putting us through the mill, and actually Jack Draper did exactly that. I'm sure he hated every minute of it in many ways, but he would have loved the fact that he still won it, because that is just vintage Andy Murray, isn't it? That is the guy that used to be out on that centre court playing like a drain and finding a way to win. Obviously he played brilliantly sometimes, but...
Is that your Andy Murray tribute, David?
So often, tennis players don't play very well.
Yeah,
or they play in the middle,
Yeah, it's not about the ceiling, is it, for the greats?
And Murray was just a master, and all these top players are finding a way. And Jack Draper needs to find a way sometimes, because 2 days' time he may come out and start blasting and being on it again. But I think it was impressive, because at the end of that fourth set, I commentated on that. I knew he was in trouble in that game when he was getting broken, and I remember commentating on the final point, and he was just panicking. He was wailing away with ground strokes that weren't doing any damage, and then he just came in, and I said, and he comes in on a wing and a prayer, and he's passed. Because of course he's passed with an approach like that. He deserved to be passed. And it was obvious it was going 5 sets. Then they closed the roof, the lights came on, and he did the full reset, and fair play to him, because Elias Ymer, who's ranked, should say this, he's ranked 205 in the world, right? He's going to have to beat a lot higher ranked players than that. If he plays like this several times, he's going to get beaten by Zverev, Fritz, whoever you want. But I think Draper can improve. Ymer had a heck of a day, but Draper won, and that's all that counts.
And talk about understanding a moment from Jack Draper in his on-court interview afterwards. He took the chance. I mean, a few people did this today. We'll come on to talk about Novak Djokovic in a moment, but he, in fact, before being asked, he brought the subject on to Andy Murray, very aware that was his slot, that he was filling Andy Murray's shoes. And just the most profound words. He said, without him, I would not be here. Without Andy Murray, there is no Jack Draper. And talk about legacy. A lot of the times legacy is, it's very woolly, isn't it? You've helped the game, you've built the profile of tennis in this country. Well, that is a human being of a legacy right there. Yeah. And that's something to be tremendously proud of. Made myself cry again. Okay, we move on.
We're going to have to get that video of them in the car driving back from the Davis Cup up after this, cheer ourselves up again.
Singing the
Proclaimers.
The Proclaimers.
And, well, Draper's singing.
Da, 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 da.
Murray's swearing
great
at him.
Fun.
That's a great video, isn't it?
Drunk Draper. Fun.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, stop trying to make me cry, everyone. Should we talk about Novak Djokovic?
Sure.
Because I can't believe how unremarkable it feels that he just casually, easily won a tennis match today, when 2 weeks ago we just assumed he wasn't playing Wimbledon because, of course, he's just had knee surgery. And then we heard the news that he had arrived at Wimbledon and he was just testing the knee and practicing, just to kind of reassure himself that, of course, he can't play Wimbledon because he's just had knee surgery. And it's amazing how you just adjust to a new normal, because today he played a best of 5 set tennis match. He was a little bit tentative out of the corners, particularly on that forehand side, the side of the knee. Maybe he wasn't flinging himself around and sliding the way he usually would on a grass court, but he didn't need to be. And it was just normal service for Novak Djokovic 3 weeks after having knee surgery. what on earth is going on?
Yeah, I mean, kind of thinking back to it, like, he won that match at the French Open when he'd torn his meniscus. Like, this injury has kind of started with something absurd and is now kind of ending with something absurd, that he's back so soon. And he described it in the press conference afterwards, saying that he couldn't have hoped for a better first round performance. He got absolutely everything out of that match that he was hoping to. I thought he served really well. That's, I think, going to be important for him. And, you know, it's kind of the first few rounds where the grass court nous and the grass court experience that he has, I think, is going to serve him really well here, because that's probably when the grass is going to be the most slippery. You know, we saw Sinner yesterday slipping all over the place, whereas Djokovic is so balanced and so good at moving on grass that he can get through these first few rounds, kind of protect the knee a little bit, do what he has to do, and then just get himself into the tournament. Like, you're right. Like, it felt normal. It was Novak Djokovic just brushing aside Vic Capriva on centre court. Like, you know, how many times have we seen something like that? And yet, it's not normal what he did today. It's pretty extraordinary, really.
Yeah, he was trying very hard, and I think succeeded in kind of not slagging off Vic Capriva in his press conference. I felt like it was very yeah, but it was Vic Capriva, you know, like,
yeah, there'll be bigger tests kind of thing.
Yes, that was the message. You know, he said, I tested out a slide just to reassure myself that I could. He said it was comforting just to test it and know that he could. It was like a training match for him today, honestly.
I mean, that's when we were doing the draw show, we talked about the first couple of rounds are just perfect for Novak Djokovic, because it is still different playing a match to training. And so he's gone out there, full crowd, centre court at Wimbledon, and he's been able to do it kind of in third gear, really, and not have to put the foot down at all. And that's important, because he wants to be putting the foot down when he's playing quarter-finals, semi-finals, final. You know, if he's going to beat these guys at the end, he's going to have to be absolutely at his peak, and he can still beat them, but he can't afford to be injured at all.
Just one flag I want to put in the ground here is that I did think he looked pretty gassed after a couple of sets of this match. I could be reading too much into it, and I think, you know, he was so much better than Vic Capriva as a tennis player that it wasn't relevant today. But I did just think, well, yeah, it makes total sense that he'd be gassed. He wouldn't have been able to train full pelt at all over the last few weeks, and, you know, before that we've talked a lot about the form wasn't quite there. He was looking a bit more physically frail than we're used to seeing him in recent months, and we were starting to speculate whether age is finally catching up with him. And I did just think, I think his draw is kind enough that it will give him the time to build that up. And by the time he is facing somebody that could really trouble him, he'll probably be there physically. But I did just think, you know, bookmark this potentially for a future round. But it was really impressive today. He seemed pretty thrilled in his press conference, I thought. I wasn't in the press conference, I read the transcript, so I don't know who asked the question about the knee sleeve, but they called it a knee sleeve.
Somebody who listens
to us. It's catching on, folks. And I feel like now that that's out there in the world, that's now the accepted term, I think.
Yeah.
Do you get any money out of that for naming it? Naming rights.
He was asked, actually, the context of the question was because it was grey.
Yeah, about the colour.
And he said he did seek approval from the club beforehand, and they said, yep, that's fine.
And he said, like, he's trying to find a white one, as though that doesn't exist in the world. Like, maybe he doesn't know what to Google. Maybe he doesn't know what to call it. And now he's like, oh, knee sleeve. I can search for one of those.
Yeah, so trying to track down the journalist that called it a knee sleeve. Could it have been Simon Briggs going for the big knee sleeve story?
I think Simon Briggs was on the big Jack Draper story.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll do some investigative work. There was also a question about his next opponent, the Brit Jacob Fernley. He very politely made it clear he did not know anything of Jacob Fernley or his work.
Yeah.
I know a little
Me
bit.
too. Tell us about Jacob Fernley, David.
Well, I got all my goss from Laura Robson because that's basically how I spent my afternoon talking to her in the commentary box. And because she's one of her other roles, I mean, she is doing some roles. One of them is tournament director in Nottingham in the tournament in the lead-up, where Jacob Fernley and Charles Broome and Henry Searle and all these young British players were spending their grass court time. And so she said, I really love these guys, you know, they're all hang out together, they're all really polite and good company, and but she said it is amusing watching them. I mean, and they've all got potential, but it's amusing watching them sort of try to understand how it all works, because for instance Jacob Fernley was in this draw and he was due up first the next day and he's still in the player lounge playing table tennis at 9 p.m. and she's like thinking, you know, there are certain coaches that would not be having that, you know, as a way to prepare for your next day's match. And it's just that he's, you know, this is what he does at his university. He goes to the same university as Cam Norrie, and she said, look, he's in that position where he's not really had much help, and he's been given a couple of weeks of Mark Hilton's time, the coach who works for the LTA, the British Tennis Association, for Andy Murray, you know, and now he's been given him a couple of weeks, and we know Mark. I mean, he really knows his stuff, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's about trying to make yourself good enough and relevant enough that you start being able to get some more coaching and maybe a physio and be able to get on the bigger tournaments and that kind of thing. But Laura reckons that I'm not including Henry Searle in this because he's the youngest one, but she thinks of the group that Fernley's the most talented. Guy from Scotland. He actually has a bit of an American twang, I thought, when he was doing his interview with us. It's sort of half Scottish, half American accent, because he spent so much time out
like
there
Alan
in
Cumming.
Texas. But you know, he was so chuffed, you know, understandably. But he's like, Novak Djokovic is my hero, and I'm going to get to play him. Amazing.
Yeah, that worries
Oh
me.
dear.
Okay, good luck, Jacob. Ronnie O'Sullivan was in Novak Djokovic's box today. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that. That's
Yeah,
good.
I feel like he had glowing words, Djokovic, about Ronnie O'Sullivan in his press conference, but I feel like the snooker authorities, the powers that be, would have had their head in their hands. He said, I don't bother watching snooker unless it's Ronnie, which I feel like is a lot of, you know, there's probably a snooker PR machine somewhere trying to get a movement off the ground.
Yeah, because like I think snooker, like their equivalent of the big three, have gone on even longer than tennis's equivalent of the big three, haven't they? Yeah.
More like a big one.
It was a bad moment.
Yeah,
for
but
the
like
snooker movement.
John Higgins and
Judd Trump.
Mark Williams.
Hey, check us out.
Is that his name?
Yeah. Welsh.
Yeah.
But
Lefty.
I think he's on his way out.
But
anyway,
he's been good for a long time.
Yeah. I still remember the days of Steve Davis and Dennis Taylor in the midnight black ball match in 1985.
Definitely nobody knows what we're talking about now, so I am going to move this on. I hinted earlier that we were going to touch upon Andrey Rublev and his defeat to Francisco Comesana, his first ever tour level match win. A fantastic performance from him. 4 sets. He plays almost all of his tennis on the Challenger Tour, and it is, you know, brilliant moment for him. But Rublev is the story here, because this is the second slam in a row that he's lost poorly and been in a bad state on court in terms of his attitude and behaviour towards himself. He said, in a moment of really dark humour today, he said he was hitting himself. He hit himself 7 times today with the racket, and he said, well, I'm not allowed to hit the court here because it's grass. And he said, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to let the emotion out. And, you know, he acknowledges how big a problem this is. He said, it's the main problem I need to improve. This is what's holding me back. He's not in denial. about it. He's in despair about it, actually, quite frankly. It was a really, really tough scene, that match, and his press conference. He just doesn't know what to do. Do you know what I think he should do? Call Goran Ivanisevic.
Why is that?
Well, if anybody can relate and potentially find him a way through it whilst really understanding him and not trying to change him, but trying to help him to channel the fire in his brain, surely it's Goran, who I know is having a lovely summer holiday right now on a Croatian yacht. Good luck to you, Goran. But he also did say that come September he would be taking calls.
He also said he wanted to coach a young player.
He's youngish.
No, he's not.
I'm not saying Goran should say yes. I'm saying Rublev should make that call.
Honestly, and to be honest, if he called Goran, I think Goran would just give us some advice for nothing. You know, as a human being, I think he would want to help him, but I don't think he'd want to coach him. That's my feeling.
But do you think it would be a good idea take the Goran out of it?
From Rublev's perspective,
From Rublev's
yes,
perspective.
100%. I mean, I also think Goran's a really good coach. You know, he's worked now with Marin Cilic, Thomas Berdych, Milos Raonic, and Novak Djokovic, and I think the only one he hasn't made considerably better is Thomas Berdych, because it was probably too late in that career. I mean, obviously it was fairly not late, but Novak Djokovic was incredibly well established, but he's so coachable, Djokovic, and he's so curious, and he wanted to improve, and he has improved. But no, I just think Goran's a really, really top coach. And you add to that, as you say, that personal experience of being somebody who in the moment would lose his mind and had to find ways to still make it work. I mean, absolutely, I think that's a good shout.
He needs something else, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's no disrespect to Fernando Vicente, who's been with him a long time, and Alberto Martin, and they know that it's a problem too. But as we've seen with Jack Draper and Wayne Ferreira, sometimes you just need somebody else who can find a different way to say it, and maybe, like you say, that personal experience.
I just wish him so well, Andrey Rublev, and it's
Well, you don't come across anybody, Kate and Matthew work with us, who know him and say what a lovely person he is. I don't know him at all, but I see what I see on social media. But you don't hear a bad word about him off the court, and it's sad to see him behaving like that.
And there's a thing which happens when Rublev does that, which always makes me very uncomfortable, and that's, you know, social media accounts clipping it up and kind of glorifying it, or you know, using it to get engagement. Oh my goodness, look at Andrey Rublev. It's a man going through some very tough stuff, and you know, he wishes he's not doing it. We all wish he's not doing it, but that doesn't strike me as the sort of thing that should be put out there as content.
It's not the aggro that we celebrate and enjoy.
It's
it's
really
disturbing what he's doing, and it's damaging to him, both physically and mentally. And it's I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it.
Yeah, in the words of Hannah just now in the chat, I don't know what Rublev needs, but I hope he finds it. Zverev won today comfortably through against Roberto Carballes, Baena, Holger Rune, totally untroubled by Sun Wukong, and Taylor Fritz, one of the easiest winners of the day behind us here on court number 18. It was like he had a Novak Djokovic 2023-esque deadline of the fading light, less than an hour and a half for him against the not so sensational today Chris O'Connell. And the last men's result I wanted to mention is poor old Seb Korda beaten by the absolute nightmare lucky loser, or fortunate flop Giovanni Pesci Pericard, who hit 51 aces today against Sebastian Korda. They split 4 tie-break sets before Pesci Pericard actually broke serve in the 5th set and won it 6-3. And Matt via Robert McNichol and the Wimbledon Museum, you have an incredibly exciting stat for the nerds.
Yes, Robert McNichol sent me a message saying we've had another 4 tie-break match. It's only the
he knows his crowd.
Right. Is this not even the stat in tomorrow's newsletter?
No, this is one of Robert's own. He said it's only the 7th time that it's happened in Wimbledon history that there's been a match with four tie breaks. I don't think there's ever been a match with 5 tie breaks. Now obviously Wimbledon and most of the slams used to play out the final set. Obviously the US Open has had a tie break for a long time, so there hasn't been that much opportunity. So, Robert, when he sent over this stat, he said, I think I might be the only person that's excited about this. And I said, Robert, it's literally your job to be excited about that. But we are waiting for the 5 tie break match, and Robert said that he simply won't be able to function when there's that. He will be too excited.
You'll be his first text, though, which is
I hope so.
It's a very lovely, wholesome thought. Again, in the words of Hannah, I'm so glad you two found one another.
I do remember Michael Stick beating Stefan Edberg without even getting his service broken by winning 4-6, 7-6, 7-6, 7-6.
Yeah,
but I don't remember a 4 tie break.
David, that's a mere 3 tie breaks. That's small. That's chump change.
That's rough for Korda. Because there's this kind of tension between the fact that he talks about himself as being a good grass court player. Remember last year there was that line he gave in a press conference where he kind of put himself in amongst the favourites at Wimbledon.
I believed him, Matt.
Me too.
I've got him in this year's quarterfinals.
Me too. He's in the section with that Rublev has just lost in. Tsitsipas is in there as well. He won today, but it felt like a section that maybe Korda could come through. And his grass court results this season have been good. Final in Toggenbosch, semis and Queens, losing to the champions at both those events. So he wasn't taking bad losses. But then, the last 2 Wimbledons, he's lost to Yuri Vesely and Pesci Payikar. Okay, they're tough players with big serves, but they're not massive names that he's losing to, and something's just not quite adding up there between what his kind of pre-Wimbledon form and his potential on this surface. Look, I don't think he moves that well. I don't think he returns that well. Those factors can get exposed, but he's also got a lot of things that the grass accentuates and makes better. And it's kind of rough for him to have 2 pretty early Wimbledon exits. I think it was 2nd or 3rd round last year and first round this year, and just kind of feels like a bit of a missed opportunity, but also a rough deal with that lucky loser coming in, because it would have been Davidovich Fokina that he played, who's not been in great form, and instead he gets 51 aces fired down at him.
Do we get excited about Pesci Payikar now?
I think when he first started coming through, I think the thing that most people were talking about with him was his single-handed backhand. He's a young player with a single-handed backhand. There's not that many of them. It does seem from watching him, he's got a single-handed backhand, but it's the serve that is the weapon. And I
feel like you're describing Ivo Karlovic.
He's got a single-handed backhand and a serve.
And look,
and was very tall.
Just because he's got one doesn't mean it's any good.
Right, and look, perfectly legitimate way to win a point, have a big serve.
Yes.
I'm just not going to get that excited about it.
You get excited if you like, though, David. Each to their own.
But he might be a good shout for our 5 tie-break match.
And I've got a feeling, David, you might be if he keeps winning, you might be assigned to one of his matches on 5 Live, because they like to put you on tall
that's
people.
on the cards, yeah.
So I try and get excited about him.
Okay.
Moving back to the women's draw and other matches and results today, Swiatek Kenin was the one that we were circling as a potential barn burner, possibly even an upset. Who knows?
Ash Barty
was hyping it.
What does she know?
Yeah, and who are we to not believe Ash Barty? Well, it was really routine, wasn't it, for Iga Swiatek? 6-3, 6-4, 20-match winning streak now for Iga Swiatek across 2 surfaces. Okay, just the 1 win on grass, but you've got to start somewhere, and this was a good place to start, Matt.
Yes, it was, and I was a little unsure why this match was played with the roof closed. You know, there had been some rain around, but by the time it started, they were, you know, playing again on the outside courts, and the forecast was good. And I did think, wow, indoor conditions might not be that helpful for Swiatek here. And the opening stages were tight. You know, Kenin got broken but broke back and was getting a lot of deep returns. And I was thinking, okay, we've got a bit of a match on our hands here. But I don't know, Kenin had a very confusing tactic, which was to stand, well, maybe it makes sense in some respects. She was Caroline Garcia-ing Iga Swiatek's serve, standing in on return and trying to be aggressive of it. But it was not working, and she didn't change it. You know, it just wasn't working, and I thought Swiatek's serving was excellent generally. You know, could maybe have got a slightly higher percentage of first serves in, but when she did get them in, she was winning the majority of her points behind it. Her second serve kick seemed pretty impressive as well. And then there were a couple of moments in the second set when Kenin started to threaten, and Swiatek just sort of battened down the hatches and didn't miss. And I was pretty impressed generally. And you know, it was a tricky match against a, you know, former Grand Slam champion, and okay, someone who hasn't been in particularly good form. But I think Swiatek just has a lot of respect for Kenin, you know, for other Grand Slam champions. She knows the level that they must have to be able to win slams. So she has a lot of respect, and she was wary. She didn't feel like she was fully in control always, but a good performance, especially as the first one on grass of the season. And yeah, it's just like it's just so fascinating how the surface just changes everything, because you know, we've just been at Roland Garros, and kind of the Iga Swiatek intrigue at Roland Garros is how much is she going to win by? You know, and here it's
upset watch.
Who's going to beat her? You know, and I just find that so great that tennis can offer that. You know, and you know, okay, there are plenty of players who can do well on all surfaces, and Swiatek may well end up being one of those as well. But right now we're in a phase of her career where you've got this sudden sort of whiplash from one slam to the next, and you just think about Swiatek in such different ways at both of those, and I find it so interesting. I think I'll be going to all of her matches.
Yeah.
I think. For that
I used to feel the same watching Jim Courier in 1992. He won the Australian Open, the French Open, and then he came to Wimbledon, and he lost in the third round to Andrey Rublev, a proper grass court specialist, and he just couldn't handle what he was doing. But then the next year, Courier reached the final, and he lost to Sampras, but he beat Edberg, a proper grass court specialist, in the semi-finals. You know, watching these players have to work it out. I feel like similarly with Arantxa Sanchez Vicario, you know, she got to finals here, despite being regarded as a proper clay courter who only won the French Open. So, no, I think that's right. It's a great quality of the sport, the different surfaces.
She was asked in a press conference, David, which 3 tennis players she would like to go to dinner with or have a picnic with in a park. Who would you think she would say?
Anna Bogdan? Or was it Kaya Juvan? I always get the two mixed up.
Why?
Wow.
Sorry, what?
No,
Yeah, she's friends with
right?
Kaya Juvan.
Exactly, that's who I was thinking
Anna
of.
Bogdan.
Yeah, she's the backhandist.
I think this
Got
is
you.
more like... I presume she can see her friends any time.
Oh.
Like she's doing that anyway.
So this is somebody exciting.
This is more like, you know...
From within tennis?
Who your dream dinner party guests?
Is this
like,
from anywhere or just on
tennis?
tennis?
Within tennis,
So she
but
can't have
not,
Taylor Swift.
not like
I was about
your
to say Taylor
mates.
Fritz. Okay. It's going well. So Iga Swiatek, Steffi Graf.
Yes.
From
Anna Bogdan to Steffi Graf via Taylor Swift.
I'm doing well.
What a journey.
3.
3.
Yeah.
All women.
All women.
Okay,
And that wasn't
good,
specified.
good.
I thought that was great because I'm sure I've heard women get asked this before and they say John McEnroe and
Yeah.
you know, Federer. And like,
Naomi Osaka.
No.
Okay. Serena Williams.
None of them are... Yes.
Venus Williams.
No.
Okay.
I was a bit surprised by the other one.
I have just momentarily... Yes, I was surprised by the other one too. And I don't think you'll get it because it's really surprising. She said Maria Sharapova, she said she'd like to quiz her on her sort of business acumen.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mm.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Should also say Iga Swiatek, whose agent now is Max Eisenberg, who is Maria Sharapova's agent, and therefore has probably heard a lot about Maria Sharapova from Max, who does love to talk about it.
Yeah, she's probably hearing less about Anna Bogdan, I would say.
And Naomi Osaka was asked this question yesterday, I think.
And what did she say?
She said Andre Agassi, Linar, and Maria Sharapova. Maria Sharapova's got a lot of imaginary dinners to get to. That's what we've learned.
And Anna Bogdan has none.
I think it probably also tells you how kind of mysterious Maria Sharapova is to these players, because nobody really knows her very well, you know. And she was here earlier this week, wasn't she? You know, she's not around tennis that much. So I think people
she's
are
sort of
curious.
around, but not around tennis.
Yes.
Like, you know, she pops up at fashion events, and she's she's still doing sweets, maybe.
Don't know. Wasn't a massive fan of that personally, but there we are.
Yeah, Sugar Pova.
Yeah.
There we go. Rybakina, in the end, a comfortable winner today. She was a breakdown for the first half of the first set, and it was upset watch. You know, first match of the day on court one, big upset watch, and then she won 11 of the last 12 games, and it was in fact very comfortable indeed. And it was one of those performances where you go, oh. But of course, it's Rybakina and it's Wimbledon, and she's so good.
And that was a pattern of a lot of her matches at the French Open. You know, a bit of a slow start, and then she would take over, really.
But she, as we've said, cautionary tale.
Absolutely.
She needs to remain on
round.
upset watch every round. Yeah, we learn from our mistakes here on the Tennis Podcast.
Do we?
Disappointment of the day is the lack of aggro between Jelena Ostapenko and Ayla Tomljanovic. Pretty much zero aggro, other than a cold handshake. But there was no aggro because Ostapenko was too good and too focused for aggro. Let me tell you, I hope Iga Swiatek didn't see this performance. Well, she wouldn't have done because she was on court. But it was sublime from Ostapenko. 6-1, 6-2. She served so well. 11 aces, including one on match point. She was holding her own on second serves. Not often, really, that Jelena Ostapenko wins more than 50% of second serve points. That is her big glaring weakness, and she was today. And okay, Tomljanovic isn't the player that she once was, but she did have a good run on grass in Birmingham this week. She's got muscle memory here at Wimbledon, and she was rocked on her heels by how good Ostapenko was. It was fearsome stuff.
I mean, Ostapenko did say that if she was 50% fit, she would beat her, if you remember. So
yeah,
true to her word.
Yeah,
yeah. And look, Ostapenko Swiatek is sort of dangling there as a potential fourth round. Like when they both had to win 3 matches, felt quite far away to me. Now they've both only got to win 2.
I want it.
I
I want
really
it
desperately
to happen.
want that match.
If the Wimbledon authorities are watching, I do need to report a major towel theft.
Oh yeah.
Jelena Ostapenko brazenly bundled what looked like about 40 towels into her into her bag after the match. It was so brazen. And she was it was like she was chatting to the umpire while she was doing it to like distract. Like, nobody look at what I'm doing here.
Available in the
she's
shop.
not alone. They all
Well,
do.
they used to be.
It's a famous thing at Wimbledon, isn't it? That these multi-millionaire tennis players nick the towels. But she really was nicking the towels. Angelique Kerber removed from Swiatek's path, if that's even an obstacle removed anymore. Kerber's comeback, I think we've probably got enough data to say now that it's not really happening. She was pretty comfortably beaten by Yulia Putintseva today. That is a tough first round opponent on grass. Putintseva's won a title this grass court season. She's beaten Osaka here before, but it wasn't that close. And Kerber's a former champion here, and you kind of felt like if she was ever going to get something going with this comeback, it might have been here or this grass court season, and it just hasn't happened. So I wonder a bit about the legs that comeback has. But Putintseva could be tough for Swiatek for sure. That's a potential third round meeting. Jessica Pegula was the first winner of the day today. It's like she saw a weather forecast, saw that rain was coming, and went, okay, I'm only going to drop 2 games.
Yeah, although all the forecasts I was looking at didn't have rain in. I was taken aback by the amount of rain today. But yeah, Pegula, very impressive. Got it done before any of the rain. Just that's an absolutely classic Jessica Pegula win at a slam. Like totally under the radar, but really impressive, really efficient, and sort of, kind of, I suppose showing that. Okay, I guess we'll find out as the tournament goes on, but we sort of questioned that decision to go to Eastbourne straight off the back of winning the title in Berlin, but she is someone who likes to play matches regularly. I think that's why she plays so much doubles. She prefers it to practice. So it doesn't feel like she's lost her momentum there. I remember with Rybakina, for example, in Australia, it was immediately obvious in the first match she played that she wasn't playing as well as she had been in Brisbane, having gone via Adelaide, and kind of the same with Collins at the French Open, but none of that for Pegula. Impressive. And
Katie Boulter, also impressive today. She's the last player I wanted to mention. She was in a tussle against Tatiana Maria. She could easily have lost this match. 7-6, 7-5. Maria, of course, a semi-finalist here from a few years ago. It was gritty stuff from Katie Boulter, and she has set up a second round meeting with fellow Brit Harriet Dart, and that's now top of my aggro watch list because those two do not get on.
Excellent.
Yes.
I believe they...
Don't tell me they've...
No, I believe they talk it down.
Up. Oh, yes, they do.
But all the evidence in the handshakes suggests...
Yes, they don't do the boxing thing of...
No.
Of talking about it, of sledging one another off court, but we can all see what's happening when they're on court together. There is no love lost there, and that's my favourite kind of match. So that'll be in a couple of days' time. Let's look ahead now to tomorrow's order of play. Interesting one to start the day off on centre court. Daniil Medvedev against Alexander Muller.
Yeah, and honestly, Medvedev might be annoyed about that because he gave a whole speech about how much he likes playing on court 1 and how he's never lost on it and
how they play
it to centre.
He thinks they play really differently.
Yeah, and so Wimbledon were like, here you go, Daniil, centre court.
It is followed by Naomi Osaka against Emma Navarro. We hoped that would be centre court, and it is, and
love that.
That's where I'll be, second match on centre tomorrow, and it's followed by Yannick Sinner against Matteo Berrettini. That's a good ticket. That is a good ticket.
That's also where I'll be.
Absolutely. Coco Gauff is first on court 1 tomorrow against a Romanian player, Anca Todoni, who quite frankly I don't know anything about. She's 142 in the world.
You do know something about her.
Well, I do know that she beat last week the person that beat Marketa Vondrousova today.
Watch out, Coco.
Watch out, Coco, exactly, because that's how that works. Carlos Alcaraz gets what I assume will be his only court 1 assignment tomorrow. They do say that they assign all the top players once onto court number 1. So that'll be that for him tomorrow, assuming he wins against Alexander Vukic of Australia, and Emma Raducanu third on court 1 tomorrow against Elisa Mertens. Fognini and Rude start court 2. Then they've got a match to finish between Auger-Aliassime and Kokkinakis. There's quite a few to finish tomorrow, and some matches that didn't even get on the schedule today to catch up with. Paolini is third on court 2. Wawrinka against Monfils. And Madison Keys is last on court 2. Sonny Cartel, one of the British winners yesterday, against Clara Burrell, first on court 3. Then Tommy Paul. Grigor Dimitrov against the young Chinese player Jerry Shang. A lot of people very excited about him, including camerawoman Kate. She's always telling me how fun and exciting Jerry Shang is. And Daria Kasatkina, Matt's tip for this half of the draw. Would that be too much?
To get to the semis.
To get to the semis, okay.
Yeah.
She's last on court 3 tomorrow. Ugo and Bear, Dan Evans against Alejandro Tabilo there on court 12. That match held over from today. Ben Shelton, he finished off his match on court 18 earlier. He's back again on court number 12. It's all happening. Coric against Tiafoe. Andreescu Noskova. That's court 18. Oh, that's right here.
Oh, what time's that?
What a gift.
Well, Coric, Tiafoe first up, and then Andreeskova. Oh God, Noskova, Andreescu second on. This is where I'll be, folks. Then, and
Do one of
hopefully
those
that'll
names, you know, for a match.
Andreeskova. I like it.
Andreeskova.
hopefully that'll dovetail
Shorthand.
nicely with Naomi Osaka.
Right.
Okay, folks, that is tomorrow. We'll be back. Just one last thing before we get into our last bit of business. Public service announcement. We've had quite a few messages and quite a few people on Twitter talking about the post 5 p.m. grounds passes, the discounted grounds passes they do for evening access here at Wimbledon. I know some people were unable to get them, particularly on Monday, I think, and they were querying whether they are no longer a thing anymore. They absolutely are still a thing. I've clarified with the club. It's just based on capacity. Each day they take a view each day as to how many people are already in the grounds, how many people are already in the queue waiting to get in, and they update the website every day at 4 p.m. as to whether or not more people can be accommodated on that evening pass. So if you're thinking of coming down and getting an evening grounds pass, just check the website at about 4 p.m. So you don't potentially waste your time. It is a great ticket to get. I remember my dad used to do that after work sometimes and just have a nice evening at Wimbledon. Lovely.
First time I ever watched Novak Djokovic live.
Really?
On one of those, yep.
Wow.
Oh.
That's
On the
cool.
old court too.
Yeah, glad they still do it. That's great.
Yeah.
And well done for finding out. That's cool.
We have our lovely Wimbledon mascot. That mascot is Maverick. Hello to Maverick. We, of course, have our mascots. Hello to Darwin. David says a big hello to Francis, who you got points today.
Yes. My old pal Walton beating Federica Coria, surprisingly. So very, very delighted with that.
It was very much more a pick against Federico Coria than a pick for Adam Bolton.
I
Would that be
decided when I
accurate?
was looking at the draw that Federico Coria is never going to win a match here at Wimbledon, ever. I don't care who he plays. And I was proved right again. So far, anyway, in his career.
Matt,
Very good on clay, but terrible on this stuff.
Matt says a big hello to Hyder and Soma.
Yep, we also got some points today. We played it pretty safe, I'll be honest. But Leila Fernandez bagged us some points.
Billie Jean is sponsored by Billie Jean King and Alana Kloss. Hello to our top folks and executive producers Jamie, Jeff, Chris and Greg. And it's over to Matt for shout-outs. And while you're doing the shout-outs, Matt, I'm going to put my jacket on because I'm so cold. I've been holding off doing this because my jacket is the same as Matt's jacket. And I thought it might be weird if we matched. But I'm simply going to have to do it.
And it's a nice jacket. Carry on, Matt.
We have Stefan in Switzerland.
Right, Stefan, like Stefan Edberg.
Like Stefan Edberg.
Excellent.
Like Switzerland, who we're going to beat in the football.
With Jude's help.
Exactly.
Yes.
He's undefeated.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stefan.
You can get
Like
Jude in the
Stefan,
Wimbledon shop as well.
Stefan Djokovic.
Yes. Correct.
Very good.
Have you got any Stefan info?
Stefan says, I want to thank Catherine for the Edberg story. I felt like I heard her eyes roll when she was forced to tell that at the end of an already long podcast. I'm not quite sure I remember the story, but
It's the Goran Ivanisevic one.
Right.
The Champions Tour one
Right.
in Zurich?
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a good story.
yeah. So thank you for that.
You are welcome, Stefan.
We've also got Ailey Nicholson, who is in Perth.
Right, Ailey.
Hello,
You like
Ailey.
Perth?
I do like Perth. Had a great time there this year.
And Ailey took advantage of 6 months living in London last year to complete the calendar slam and, get this, attend the Shrewsbury live show.
Hey!
Ailey!
What a ledge.
Yeah.
Ailey, you are the coolest. Love that. Hello,
Thanks,
Ailey.
Ailey.
Thank you.
And finally, we've got Kerry Ward in Canberra, Australia.
Ah,
Hi, Kerry.
home of Nick Kyrgios.
Yeah.
Ward like James Ward.
Very good. Very good. Who helped Britain towards winning the Davis Cup in 2015.
Big John Isner win.
Yes.
Genuinely,
Yeah,
very,
huge.
like
Pivotal.
It's massively significant.
We are saying that with all sincerity.
Yes, Andy Murray had a big role to play, obviously, but seriously, if James Ward hadn't beaten John Isner, it's not happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kaylee.
Kerry.
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 Thank you, Kerry. Any tennis Kerrys? No, no tennis Kayleys either. Okay, great. Thank you to all of our shout outs. Thank you to all of our friends of the Tennis Podcast. We couldn't do this without you folks. So thank you. If you want to become a friend, the link is in our show notes. Do subscribe to the newsletter. King of the Noughties is postponed for one day due to illness, but it is not a retirement, David. You do not win by walkover. Matthew is returning.
Are we having like the round to make up? Because otherwise, I'm 1 point behind. I'm 3-2 down. I don't want to lose opportunities.
No.
Yeah, there will be a double header.
Right.
There was talk of sending Matthew the question remotely, but then we were told a story by somebody who will remain absolutely nameless about Matthew once cheating in a sweepstake. So we've decided we don't trust him. We love you, Matthew, if you're watching. I hope you're not watching.
Have we said that out loud?
You need to be in bed. It was a sweepstake with no money on the line.
Oh, okay. Fine.
That makes it all right.
There's no money on the line with this. It's just massive pride.
Exactly.
That I intend to keep.
Well, exactly. That's why we decided not to trust him, because
Right.
the integrity of King of the Noughties is king.
Yeah.
Is important. Folks, everything we're wearing, not everything, waist up. I've done it
Keep
again.
doing this.
Everything Jude's wearing.
Lots of the things we're wearing are available from the Wimbledon shop, and it really is lovely. I dashed there earlier to buy a gift, and I had a lovely time in the number 1 court Wimbledon shop, and it's lovely stuff. So if you're coming to Wimbledon, make sure you head there. If you're not coming to Wimbledon, but want to get something online, they ship globally, and it's a great website, so check it out. And do come back tomorrow at the close of play for our day 3 tennis podcast live from Wimbledon. Hopefully it'll be just a little bit warmer, but either way we'll be here, and we will see you and speak to you then.